I'm Pat Gelsinger, CEO of VMware, and I'm joined here by Shaker Iyer, who runs the telco business for us. And we're excited to talk today about what we see for the future of the telco cloud infrastructure and 5G and the great opportunities. Shaker?
Yeah, Pat, this is fascinating. It's got to be one of the biggest capital build-outs of the century, and as you've often said, this is really transforming us from being what used to be a hardware-defined industry to now completely being software-defined.
Yeah, we're super excited about the opportunities that we see here. And 4G and LTE were largely driven by consumer.
Yep, that's
But
right.
we see that 5G in particular is going to be enterprise and consumer and presenting bigger market and transformation opportunities. And it's not just the bandwidth, but it's also the latency, the security, the quality of service. That's going to open up smart factories, smart cities, new healthcare opportunities, really reflecting across pretty much every industry that we see in the future being built out. And being built in a new and different way, though.
Yep, that's exactly right, Pat. And I think in some ways, this is taking us to the edge. Edge computing is going to become a big part of how this delivers 5G to the enterprise. And I think we are also seeing this as a transformation that is now going to lead us into requiring consistency in operations, consistency in architecture, across the different domains as this 5G gets delivered to the enterprise. So.
Yeah, and very much, as I spoke 3 years ago at the Mobile World Congress, I said that there was going to be two types of 5G deployments, those that were built around a software architecture and those that would fail.
Yeah.
Right? It was a pretty bold statement at the time. But we truly see that there's this fundamental transition that's occurring as a software platform, right, becomes separate from the underlying hardware infrastructure. And this transition is very much what happened in the data center, right? A couple of decades ago, when in my years at Intel, I was, centrally involved in the shift from vertical platforms that were Sparks and Superdomes to horizontal standard cloud platforms, which truly today has built out the cloud infrastructure and changed the world. And we see a similar thing happening in the telco space. And maybe you could talk about some of those challenges a bit, Shaker.
No, absolutely. I mean, as I think you were prescient in noticing that trend, which has now transcended into the telecom industry. Historically, it's been very vertically operated. There were kind of stacks that were purpose-built for certain things. Now it's becoming a much more of a cloud-like architecture. It's fundamentally transforming the way carriers can become agile service providers for the next generation of cloud. And this is having an impact on all parts of their architecture, from their core network to what is being delivered from the edge, to also radio access and what is happening on the RAN side.
And you've had some pretty big successes in the core network so far.
Absolutely, Pat. As you know, we've done really well from a VMware standpoint in terms of taking some of the biggest carriers, like Vodafone as an example, and helping transform them and their infrastructure into next generation architectures. We now have over, I would say, 100 telecom operators globally that have standardized their infrastructure in some form or the other to deliver what used to be NFV, or network functions virtualization, and now increasingly it's becoming more the telco cloud for them to operate their network functions on top of. We also have a number of carriers that are standardizing on VMware's VeloCloud for their SD-WAN. And I think increasingly we're going to start seeing this operational model now become very prevalent in pretty much every part of what the operator does as the new cloud provider.
And that's been pretty exciting to see this transition, exactly like we saw in the data center to the cloud, and now from the traditional network to the telco cloud. But today's news is pretty exciting on what we're doing in the RAN.
Absolutely, Pat. I mean, this is something that I don't think anybody would have thought about. I mean, this is now, you're talking about the guts of the access network of the operator. Service providers, they look at access as the big part of both their delivery as well as their spend. And for the longest time, they would have sworn that that could not come anywhere close to cloud-like architecture. So what we are now seeing is an industry transformation where the radio access network is getting disaggregated, And as a result of this disaggregation, we're now able to collect a bunch of these components and offer them in a kind of a cloud-like form factor. So in partnership, as we have just announced with Deutsche Telekom, we are now at a point where we are able to show how you can take a whole bunch of these radio functions, turn them into software workloads, and then work them on top of our infrastructure. So as an example, scheduling, radio scheduling, one of the core components of radio architecture used to be integrated, an integral part of this hardware stack, can now be bumped up to operate as a software workload on top of this infrastructure. So we're just fascinated that we've made this, and we're making history here together. So.
Well, super excited about this. And again, very much like what happened to the core data center, but now happening to the RAN.
Yeah.
And again, I think it's great that we're doing that in partnership with Deutsche Telekom, but also Intel.
Yes.
That really was the purveyor of the industry standard server, and now doing that into the RAN architecture. Super exciting relationship.
Absolutely. The FlexRAN architecture from Intel is, again, a core component of how this gets delivered. And so I think with us pioneering this sort of virtualization, containerization of software, and then layering that on the FlexRAN architecture with Intel, this is just, I think, a dream come true for the carriers as they look to becoming much more agile service providers for the future.
And, how do you see these challenges playing out over time, Shaker? This is a big transition for the industry.
It is. It absolutely is a big transition, but I do think that this is one where the question is really a matter of when and not if. So carriers are increasingly now starting to work with us and us with them, along with Intel, to try and see how we can take parts of this architecture, make that into more software-defined workloads on top of this infrastructure, and then how do we get an industry ecosystem now corralled around creating sort of a marketplace for people to come in, both, I would say, incumbents, like Ericsson and Nokia and so on, but also new age players, and have them all live on top of a common platform with defined APIs, so that they can deliver their applications as network functions on top of this infrastructure. So I'm just delighted that we are leading this transition, and I'm very, very optimistic that this is going to lead the carriers into a better future, much more economical. They're going to get, I would say, both top line as well as bottom line improvements as part of this architecture.
So a big partnership with Deutsche Telekom, with the Intel reference architecture. Anybody else?
Well, we should mention Dell Technologies. So as you know, we've been innovating a lot at the software level, and then Intel at sort of the processor level, and then bringing all these together in the form of systems. Dell has been a very helpful partner in doing that. And so with many of these carriers, we are able to provide between us as well as Dell and Intel an end-to-end system that allows the different VNFs to layer themselves on top of this architecture.
Super exciting progress, and the benefits of increased innovation, right? And that speed of innovation that we've seen in the cloud ecosystem, bringing that not just to the core, but also to the RAN.
Yeah.
This is a thrilling time of innovation, really changing the operational costs, but also the capital cost characteristics.
Yep.
So it really increasing top line, accelerating innovation, driving improvements to bottom line. This is really a powerful cycle of innovation for the industry. And we see that what GSMA is doing and driving 5G forward has really been a thrilling piece, bringing this to every industry, consumer as well as enterprise, and the role that VMware is playing in helping to facilitate that with key partnership announcements today like Deutsche Telekom. Today's a great day for the industry, and thrilled to be able to spend some time with you discussing that. So to all of our audience, we thank you for the time that you're able to join us today. Big announcements and huge progress in moving the technology of 5G and telco cloud forward. Thank you so very much.